Okay, I just start off by saying this isn't pleasant. It's not what we want to be giving shurim about. And it's something that this still developing situation has. I was debating myself whether to say something in public, whether to speak about it, and I think there's a lot of confusion around, and the purpose of what I'm going to say now is not to give my opinion on it, not to give my opinion on what should happen, how things should pan out. That's just irrelevant, and my opinion doesn't count to anyone. It's not. There are the senior Rabbanim of the community are heavily involved with it. What's troubling me is, I think, that people don't really know what's going on, and there's a lot of messages around WhatsApp, Facebook, kind of no one really understands what the issues are, I think, because no one's really spoken out about it other than a shiur that was given a couple of weeks ago. Since the lecture that has sparked all this controversy was a shiur given in Golders Green, a letter put up, and since then nothing's really. Since then, everything's kind of gone. Is all happening in the background. There has a lot been happening. A lot has been happening. Things maybe have happened from America, Eretz Israel, but in England you don't see much happening. As is the way of English Jewry, everything it seems to happen in the background. But that's caused, in terms of us on the street, us in the day to day, it caused a lot of confusion. No one really knows what's happening. And I just want to kind of fill in and to understand what actually are the issues that are being discussed and are being looked at. What are the problems? What are the controversial points? Can I just ask who here would usually is a regular? I know Shula, you go. Who else? You're regular. You're regular. Right. You're regular. David.
Yeah, I've been a few times.
Right. Okay. I don't mind. You're regular. No. Okay. It's fine. Fine, that's fine. Either way, I'm not just interested to know. It's pretty tragic, to be honest. It's tragic. I will have to say a few words of introduction before we get into the nitty gritty. So you'll have to bear with me. It is tragic, the situation, because we have a person that is supremely talented. He's the charismatic. He's very capable, and people have really gained a lot from him. I think that's fair to say, Sharon, right? People have really gained a lot. And I don't know how things are going to pan out exactly, but I won't say it's looking great. And especially as he's Sephardi, and there aren't many Sephardi Rabbanim around really. There's a Bet Knesset in the area looking for a Rav, and they haven't even got a candidate to think about. There's no one really coming through. We do need it, but so it's not pleasant to talk about. But I think we need to give some clarity on the matter. And I've been quite involved with it. I've been in touch with the senior Rabbanim all the way through since this lecture took place. And right. So I forgot to say, please. I'd ask if there wouldn't be any questions, please. I know that I'm very interactive, and I do like, but I at the end I'm going to hang around. I'm not running off. You're welcome to ask me anything you want, but I prefer just as we go through there won't be any questions. What I'm saying, and a lot of the criticism, the challenges to him that have been raised, I know from myself, and I know from the Rabbanim that I've been mixing with, whether it's in Kolel, around the Kehillah, and that I speak to. There's a huge swathe of Rabbanim that have no political interest at all here. Absolutely no political interest. They've got no interest to see this, what was a very, very popular shiur, shut down. No interest in curtailing the actions of Rabbi Dweck, and it's really just people. The Rabbanim are there's some issues that they're very bothered by, genuinely bothered by. I know one of my colleagues gave a shiur over Shabbat on the subject. I won't go into detail, but he risks a lot by giving that. He genuinely put himself on the line in many different ways. He's involved in many different things. It was not simple what he did, and he did it purely because he felt it was the right thing to do, to give over the people to have a picture of what's going on. I'm not going to take quite the same line as him. There's many different ways of looking at these things. There's many different issues that arise, and I'm going to take maybe a little bit different line to him. As I said, and I just pray, Be'ezrat Hashem, am I doing it because it's cool to, there's the Yetzer Hara to try and bash someone else, and there's an element of that? Quite probably. I hope not, but quite probably. Am I, I think someone at the door. Thank you. Am I doing it, Shem Shamayim? I want to help the Kehillah, and I want people to understand what's going on. I hope so. I don't know how much of that there is. I hope so. Whatever I'm saying, and it is not appropriate or shouldn't be said, I ask Mechila from Rabbi Dweck. It's not appropriate for me to say anything if I'm not doing the Shem Shamayim and if it's not in the interest of everyone. But what I understand I'm saying is in the interest of the Kehillah, of the people. I'm asking you please not to. So what I want to, the purpose of my aim here, my target here is not to, as I said, to give an opinion. My target here is to just fill you in on what actually is happening, what's being discussed, and what are the issues. The issues that came about, there's a very interesting phenomenon that's occurred, and really a situation that we've realised through this situation developing. It's come to light that the original issues for which the shir suddenly came into the limelight, and people started, what's he said, and it was a whole, became a major talking point. It was brought to the attention of the Rabbanim, because Rabbanim didn't sit in the shir, didn't hear the shir. The major point that was brought to him is not necessarily the what the Rabbanim and what people who've been learning consider to be controversial, and isn't necessarily what is being spoken about now and what is being looked at now. So the original issue of whatever people thought might be controversial in that original lecture, we'll get to that lecture point. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. There's been all different videos around analysing it, breaking it down. Some of them are more kind of calculated and calm. Some of them are, to me, are just toxic, and I don't really appreciate that type of style, but I will come to a couple of points in that lecture. But I want to show everyone what really are the issues and what's being judged on, and then I think people get a better idea of it's misrepresented. People have an idea at the moment that there is someone who. Well, okay, I'm not going to talk about what people think at the moment. I'm just going to lay it out, and then people can decide for themselves. I would also, because the starting point was that lecture on the subject of Mishkav Zachor, I would also just preface by saying that there's no question to any Rav that we need to talk about that subject, and it's something that needs to be, and I think that it has highlighted very much that there is a need in the community to talk more about that subject. Not necessarily in public, it isn't necessarily the right thing to do in public always. It means there needs to be more communication about it. We need to be more open, available to speak about it, more appreciation of people who are struggling with this, just appreciating that they have this issue, wanting to help them, wanting to work out what they can do about it, what they can, how they can function, and how they should look at it, and help them try and understand what's happening with them. And that really needs to be looked at. It needs to be sensitivity. It needs to be thoughtfulness. There needs to be, and that the people who are struggling with this, or people who have these tendencies, those people themselves are not particularly shouldn't be shunned and pushed away and just looked at as some sort of freaks or something that we have to run away from. We do need to interact, and we do need to really give more guidance. And that's maybe one question against a lot of Rabbanim, that why is more guidance not given? Why is there not more interaction and more information and more understanding? But the issues that came up were not really that. That wasn't that. Nobody disputes that. No Rabbanim, no one disputes the need to connect and the need to be sensitive and the need to help and need to include. The question is certain principles that some people feel were breached in that lecture, which we'll come to. I want to say what's happened. After, I want to go through a little timeline just to get an idea of what's been happening. After that lecture, the senior Dayanim, the Dayanim of all the Batei Din, spoke to him, and he didn't retract. A representative of each of the three Batei Din. So we're talking about the Bet Din, the Federation, and Dayan David from the Sephardi. So one of each was quite a unique meeting of the representative of all the Batei Din together. I was told by one of those Dayanim that he was given an Azhara Chamura, a serious warning. There were subsequent interviews given that indicated as if everything that was said in the original lecture was okay. That's what seemed to be in the original in the interviews that were given, and many of us were bothered. Many Rabbanim were bothered about the content of that lecture, and also bothered about how things panned out afterwards. And it came to light. This is unusual. Rabbanim, Talmidei Chachamim, started to look at the other lectures. Started to listen through the other lectures that were on the website. Now there are no lectures on the website at all. They've all been pulled from the website. And a picture comes out. I want to just present some examples of there's three areas where there are issues, and these are being looked at by the senior Dayanim. There are three areas where there are issues. I want to present these issues. And whether that means what that means in terms of practical, whether the person, what that means in terms of his standing and what should happen to him, that's not really my position. But if people, I think it's important that we know the issues that are being looked at. Halachically, I like to give the first one. I'm going to go in order of severity. What you could say is the least severe issue is halachically. When we listen through the halacha shiurim, it's striking. It's striking the inaccuracies and the mistakes that seem to be in the lectures. I want to give a few examples. These are just lectures that were just picked at random. It's normal that people do make mistakes. That's certain, and my halachot are challenged often, and people do make mistakes in halacha shurim. That's for sure. To have a halacha shurim that someone's listened to and has a A4 page of mistakes for each shiur is unusual. It raises eyebrows. And I'd like to just present some of them just to give an idea of what we're talking about. An example is in the shiur of Eruv. There's one shiur about can Sephardim carry in the Eruv, if I'm not mistaken. And for example, he says something. I'm not quoting this accurately, and I'm happy to play the clip. I have the recording, so I can play back. And if anyone's unhappy with the way I present something, by all means, at the end, you know, challenge me on it. I'm presenting this as a rabbi, as somebody who's been learning Kollel for maybe about 20 years or more, and this is what I understood from it. And I discussed it with peers, and we thought, well, maybe he didn't mean this, maybe he did mean that, and really some pull of trying to work out that it might not be as it seems. And so I'm presenting here, and still these errors seem to occur. For example, a shiur about the Eruvin, there's a question about what you need for a Reshut HaRabim. That maybe, if you know, we have the Eruv in London, so it's something that people know about. When a public domain, to have a public domain, in order to have a problem of carrying, you need a public domain. There's a contradiction in the Shulchan Aruch as to whether to have a public domain, to be considered a public domain, is it good enough that it's 16 amot wide. Tetzain is 16 amot wide, like about 8 meters wide. And once it's 8 meters wide, it's Reshut HaRabim, and that means that's quite stringent. It means in that you can't apply Eruv. It's more difficult to make an Eruv. Or in addition to that, you need somewhere that Shishim Revu 600,000 people are going through, however you define that exactly. And he said that it was asked why Ashkenazim can make Eruvin. How come they tend to make Eruvin more than we do? And he says that because the Shulchan Aruch, there is the Maran. We have the opinion of we're not sure whether every street is Reshut HaRabim because you don't. As long as it's 16 amot wide, that's good enough. Or maybe the Maran holds that you need 600,000 walking through, which in that case most of these roads are not Reshut HaRabim, so it's more lenient. But he says the Ramah, who the Ashkenazim follow, we don't know what he holds. He says in the Shul, we don't know what he holds, so therefore the Ashkenazim that's easier. First of all, that raises an eyebrow because if the Ramah doesn't say an opinion on something, then the default of the Ashkenazim would be to go to the Maran, to the Shulchan Aruch. That would be the normal procedure. Secondly, the Ramah in Shim Mem Vav Sif Gimel says explicitly what he holds. It appears to be just a straight out error. That's one. Okay, people make mistakes. Another example: riding bikes on Shabbat. And he's going through the Teshuvah in Rav Pa'alim, if I'm not mistaken. The Ben Ish Chai has a Teshuvah about riding bikes, very famous Teshuvah about riding bikes. And he introduces the concept that a bike, he says, is 4 tefachim wide, and therefore a bike will take a din of a reshut by itself, and based on that, a bike is one of the reasons why a bike can be ridden through Reshut HaRabim. The Ben Ish Chai has a chidush about riding a bike, that's not necessarily considered carrying it. The Teshuvah of the Ben Ish Chai there is very clearly talking about a rickshaw. He's asked by somebody in Bombay who had a rickshaw, it's one of these wide bikes, and that's 4 tefachim wide. This 4 tefachim wide, which makes Reshut HaYachid, is applied directly to a bicycle of our day. What comes across is it didn't look properly through the original Teshuvah. It's possible. I don't know what exactly happened. Another example, that's 2. Another example is that he reads out a line in if I'm not mistaken, in Livyat Hen, I think it's one of the Sfarim of Rav Vadia. And the Rav Vadia writes like this: Mikom Makom, it's about the halakha, that isn't so relevant what the halakha is, but he says like this: Mikom Makom, nevertheless, la halakha, his decision is, Kevan sherabu ha'acharonim shekatvu la'achmir, since the acharonim, many acharonim that write to be stringent about the matter, bevadai sheken ra'ui lehorot la'achmir, that it's definitely therefore correct to lehorot, to paskin, to say the halakha is to teach the halakha la'achmir, to be mahmir, to be stringent. That's what that translates with that. I think that's accurate translation, right? The translation in the lecture on the halakha is that really, if it says ra'ui laharot lachmir, it really means that it's mutar minadin. Really, it's chumrah. So therefore, to be lenient is perfectly acceptable. You really should be lenient, except the fact that everybody is machmir. It isn't appropriate to be machmir, to be mekil, to be lenient in front of them, and therefore you shouldn't be mekil when everybody's being machmir. If you're in a place, he says, that nobody knows you, or if you're out in the middle of nowhere, or even a place nobody knows you, then it's appropriate then you can be mekil, you can be lenient. Because really you can be lenient. Rav Vadia just means that it's not right to be lenient when everybody else is being machmir in front of everyone else. First of all, he doesn't say that at all. That's absolutely not seemingly what the Rav Vadia is saying. He's saying that since the Rabu Ha'acharonim means the poskim, the opinions are so many to be machmir, even though I would have said you can be mekil, he doesn't say, so he says, but it's ra'ui la'orot lachir, it's the right thing to teach people is to be machmir. That's what Rav Vadia says. Secondly, there's an error about how you apply minhagim. Now he's saying if nobody knows you in a place where they're all being machmir, you can do it because nobody knows you. He says if you're incognito, it maybe means if nobody can see you or something, but that isn't a correct application of a minhagim. If you're in a place where there's a minhag to to do something. For example, we always have an Israeli here on second day Yom Tov. He has to keep minhagei makom, and therefore he has to act like he's keeping Yom Tov. He cannot do melachot even when no one can see him. It's just not the accurate application of that halakha. So that's another. There seems to be an inaccurate translation there. Another example in the Hilchot Pesach Shiur, and I'm not picking. It's not like I found. I should just stress. I didn't find a mistake like some clanger in the middle of the shiur. Just something that I can pick out to you. I'm giving examples that is clear for me to explain now. I'm not going to take a lot of background. The actual mistakes are, we're talking about a page per shiur, boom, 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 one after the other, just a straight mistake one after the other. Whether it's misquotes, whether it's not having looked at the original teshuvah that he's coming from, whether not having looked at the Gemara, or I don't know, maybe did look at the Gemara, but not quoting the Gemara accurately, and misunderstanding the way it's coming from the Gemara or from the Rishonim. Another example is that washing pots. He says that that if you wash a pot with detergent, washing up liquid, we have a rule that if a pot is the biliot, that even if a pot's clean, there is food absorbed into the pot. So even if it's clean, you can't use a milky pot that's clean to cook meat, because there's milk absorbed in the pot. We have a rule though that certain leniencies apply when the pot has been left for a day. It's not ben yomor. The absorbed parts of the pot, the food absorbed in the pot, become pagum. They become spoilt. And therefore, there are certain leniencies if you cooked it, but if you cooked milk in the pot by mistake, can you eat it even if it's a meaty pot? It becomes more lenient. He tells us that if you wash up a pot with detergent, with fairy liquid, with hot water and fairy liquid, and it's clean, it now has the halakha of being eno ben yomor. It says you have now spoilt the bliot inside the pot, and therefore and he said the simple application of that is, he does say this, that if you by mistake cook, let's say, milk in that pot after you've cleaned the pot, but the avad you can eat it, because it's the bliot the food absorbed is spoilt. Now there's nobody as far as I know who holds that. Everybody, as far as I know, either the pot's left till the next day, or if you leave the detergent in the pot and you boil it, you leave it boiling, there may be some who hold that. But just to wash a pot in hot water with that, there seems to be. I don't know what the makor is for that. I'd be interested to know if there is a makor. Maybe there is. I may be mistaken. That I've never heard anyone pass them like that. He mentions that if somebody is born in Ben Mashot, if a child is born in another shiur about bringing in Shabbat, if a child is born born after Shabbat came in on Friday night before it got dark, so Ben Mashot in the twilight time, the baby, he says, we're mahmir to do the Brit. When do you do the Brit? Because is the child born on Friday or Shabbat? When do you do the Brit? So if you do it, you can only do a Brit on Shabbat if it's in its time, on Bismano. You can't do a Brit on Bismano. You can't do a Brit on Shabbat if the child's born on Wednesday and it got pushed off.
No.
So if you're born on Ben Hashmashot, so maybe it's Friday. So anyway, I don't want to get. It's interesting, but I'd rather not get sucked into the discussion. The fact is that you can't do it the next Friday, because if you do, the fact is you can't do it on Shabbat because it might be he was born on Friday, and the halakha is you do it on Sunday. You have to push it off till Sunday because you don't do a Brit beforehand. And he tells us you do a Brit. We're mahmir to do the Brit on Friday. As we said, you do the Brit on Friday. Another example, some others may have heard this was going around a bit. This is straight out error that he's talking about how much time we add on to the calendar of Erev Shabbat, and he said 18 minutes, which is what they do in America, that they add on 18 minutes to Shkia. So if sunset is a certain time, you add on 18 minutes. He's discussing that Rabbi Vadia and others tell you don't have to add on so much time. 2 or 3 minutes is enough. Rabbi also speaks about the minimum you need is about 3-4 minutes, and he says that it's not necessarily 18 minutes, and therefore you can do Melacha till 17 minutes after the candle lighting time. Now that may yes or no, it might be a leniency. The problem is in England, the calendars add on either 15 or 16 minutes. There's no calendar that adds on 18 minutes. So that's 100. How many? I don't know how many people there, but that's a whole room full of people all being told they can be Mechalel Shabbat effectively. It's an error, it's a mistake, but that's not really acceptable. That's shoddy. And he talks about when Shabbat goes out, that 18 minutes are added on to the time of 18 minutes, please, 18 minutes are added on to the time when Shabbat goes out, and that simply isn't it isn't true in England. We have 3-4 minutes onto the time. We consider night, whatever time. Night is big machloket, whether night is this time, that time. There's some made up times in England. We don't quite know how, the divrei neviut of how they got to some of these times in England. But the fact is, nobody adds on 18 minutes to what they think is night. So to say you can do Havdalah and take Shabbat out after 16 minutes before the time on the calendar is not right. What I'm trying to find, it's not pleasant, because it's like if I'm nitpicking little bits and pieces in the shiur, and it's really not pleasant. But what seems to be is a pattern of not really understanding the original sources, not really checking the sources properly, building a very good clear picture of what he thinks the halacha is and how it works, and making differences based on that and applying it based on that. And for a rabbi who maybe is doing kiruv in the Outer Hebrides or somewhere, that would be maybe it's acceptable not to be. And if you have a question, you're going to call somebody senior. It's surprising, very surprising. This was the first thing that was surprising when I started listening to some of these shurim. That's the thing that struck me in the halacha. It's something that just didn't seem to make sense. That's the first area. I'd like to want to what to me is more troubling is specific examples where that if you want the hashkafot, or the rules by which how we perceive Torah, seem to be very troubling. I just want to give a couple of examples. I'm giving them straight out of I've listened to myself a few times to these, maybe I got it wrong, maybe I've misunderstood it, and the clips are out there that I can, if you think I've misquoted. The Gemara, I'll go from the least to the most maybe, or the least, this is maybe the least, possibly. The Gemara has often, we have the Mishnayot. The Mishnayot are the body of Torah Sheba'al Peh that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi put together in writing. He compiled all the sayings of all the Tanaim that were all by mouth, that had come from Moshe Sinai. When we received the Torah, we received the written law, and we received an explanation with it, the Torah Sheba'al Peh. It came with an explanation. It wasn't just given as, here, work it out. It was given with detailed explanation, as the pasuk says. Those were passed on generation to generation, and it came to a point where Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote it all down in the Mishnayot. The Gemara sometimes has contradictions in the Mishnayot, sometimes has problems between two Mishnayot, or a Mishnah is a contradiction to a certain opinion of a Tana who would appear in a Mishnah. So if you have Rabbi Meir, we don't understand, but he seems to have said something else somewhere else. So one of the functions of the Gemara is to do something called an okimta. What I'm pointing out, let me just point something out, it's a quite important point. These things may not seem all that shocking. Probably that's a reason why people didn't come out of these lectures saying, wow, I can't believe he said this, and no, nothing was flagged up before. But for people learning for a while, for people who have learning Torah, and Torah is their what they're trying to teach, and taking, if you want, a career, or that's what they're doing in their life, these things are shocking, because these things are not the usual accepted way of understanding, and they're not. Somebody who's been in yeshiva 3, 4, 5 years doesn't normally think like this or make these kind of mistakes. It says the Gemara has a function called an okimta. An okimta means that we say that the Mishnah that says these words is specific. We're establishing it in the certain case, that it isn't at face value you think it means this. He's talking about a barrel there, if I'm not mistaken, and he says it's not just a barrel, any old barrel, it's a barrel you did something with, and that's the particular case of the Mishnah, and that's why it's not difficult from another case where that didn't happen. So it's an okimta. But there's no question that the Mishnah is staying as it was. The Mishnah included, that's the kavanah of the Mishnah. That the Mishnah means that, it's included. Rabbi Nasi wrote the Mishnah in a concise form that were easy to remember, easy to take to commit to memory, and he had the way he structured them was some sort of a genius way in that he could provide a platform that would allow you to find a hint to all the different halachot that could be based on it that are in the Gemara. And that was unless it's something that's new, the assumption is it was included in the intention of the Mishnah. He says that it was a self-imposed I'll read the words here, self-imposed sanction, so Mishnah should be able to remain intact. He says that Amoraim there's another point I should point out here, that Amoraim, the later, those that came after the end of the Mishnah, after Ibn Nasi, were Amoraim. They were the later generation that we find in the Gemara. And they don't argue with the Tanaim of the Mishnah. If an Amorah says something, if Abaye says something, and we find that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, or Rabbi Meir has said something in contradiction, says the opposite, Abaye has a problem. Abaye has to reconcile his opinion with the Tanaim. So the two eras cannot, the later era of the Amoraim cannot argue with the Tanaim. That's accepted. He says, this is a self-imposed sanction that the Amoraim, they accepted that upon themselves. So the Mishnah should be able to remain intact and not unravel as a result of constant arguing back and forth. That the Mishnayot shouldn't, if you're going to have questions on the Mishnayot and we're going to change opinions and we're going to say things in different ways, and the Mishnayot are going to fall apart. We can't have the Mishnayot anymore. They're going to look different. So they said we're not going to argue directly on the Mishnah. As an attempt to maintain some clarity, he says a fixture, as an attempt to maintain that it should stay the same, the Mishnayot should stay as they are, a fixture of halakha, so it shouldn't be completely lost. What did the Amoraim do? He said they were very resourceful. So they maintained a kavod for the Mishnah in how it was written, by not changing the Mishnah, the surah of the Mishnah, they left it as it was basically, but creative in how they interpreted it. But because we've got a difference of opinion really, because we're arguing with the Mishnah, but there's a sanction, we've decided we're not going to outwardly argue with the Mishnah because the Mishnah is going to be a mess, the Mishnah are all going to fall apart if we argue with them. And we really are arguing with the Mishnah, but we're going to not do that blatantly, and therefore we're going to find a way of putting our opinion into the Mishnah. And he says, so they didn't argue overtly on the Mishnah. They didn't argue outright on the Mishnah. That's how he explains. And that's what is an ukimta, that they say the Mishnah is talking about this case, because they want to apply their opinion into the Mishnah. That's just mind-boggling. That's just a red flag. I can't tell you that it's against the klalim of ikrim of Torah. I can't tell you that you wouldn't give someone an ayah if he says that. That's not. I won't tell you have to even. Then he implicates halachically. The man is fine, but that's just not the accepted kalim. That's not what. If I'm not mistaken, that's not the Keser Mishnah at the beginning of Sanhedrin Mamrim. Says clearly that the Amoraim do not argue with the Mishnah. After the end of the sealing of the Mishnah, when that time was sealed, when it was finished, Amoraim do not argue on the opinion of the Mishnah. They just don't go. And after the Gemara was sealed, nobody after the Gemara, the Chatima of the Gemara, argues on them. So the Geonim and the Rishonim do not argue on the Gemara. Not because we want to keep the Gemara in the shape it was, but because we don't have the Azut. We realise that it's an era where they were closer to Har Sinai, they had more understanding, and we don't challenge their opinion. If I've got an opinion, I think that they didn't say the opposite, I can find a way of explaining what they're saying like me, but I can't change their opinion, I can't argue on it. So that's the first example of Ukimta, which is very, very difficult to understand. The second one, another one I want to give you an example is, he says about, when we're talking about, this is in the shiur of, I think it's a shiur of what's wrong with modern halakha. And in his shiur he says that there's a klal that there's a process of how the Chachamim, how Sanhedrin, apologize. There's a klal of how there is a process and a development in Torah such that one Sanhedrin later could decide something to a different Sanhedrin before. And there's a development and there's arguments and there's various stages of halakha. He tells us that the rule ayin tachat ayin, I don't want to go into the whole flow of the shur. If you really want to know what the whole chidush of the shur, then you might be able to find it. I wouldn't advise you to listen to it, but if I want to pick out one point, the ayin tachat, he says that ayin tachat ayin is we know when it's pasuk says that if somebody knocks out an eye, the tachat ayin, you have to knock out his eye. That's the literal reading of the pasuk. Gemara in Baba Kama says that the Gemara that the pasuk doesn't mean that. That it means that if you knock out someone's eye, you have to find out the value of his eye, and you should and you should pay him. It means mammon. It means you pay money. He tells us that the Torah is saying that that you should knock out an eye. Chachamim saw that was too rough, that was too harsh, and they made a drasha, because the Gemara in HaChovel, in Gemara Bakama, Gemara says it's a drasha. Ayin tachat ayin, the Gemara proves from a drasha why it means money. So the Gemara is saying a drasha to say it doesn't mean literally an eye, it's money. So essentially Torah means one thing, but the Chachamim saw that it was too harsh and they changed it with the drasha. That's one thing. And I read the word. Do you think that creative court wouldn't be able to, in the same way, when they looked at ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye, poke the guy's eyes out? No, you can pay compensation, he says. So, it's too harsh. Now, maybe that's the wrong interpretation. He gives another example, just in case I got it wrong. And I think it's right if you see there's some more words there, but if you say stoning, he says skila, the death of penalty of skila in the Torah is to stone someone to death. What does it mean? The Gemara, the halacha is, it means you push somebody off a high platform, and that's how you stone him, right? And he says that the Torah means you've got to throw stones, you've got to take stones and stone him to death by throwing some massive boulders, stones at him. The rabbis felt that was too harsh, that was too brutal, and as far as I understood from him, maybe I misunderstood, as far as I understood from him, he's saying that society developed and society became to a feeling that it's too brutal. So the Chachamim changed it and said no, throwing the stone at him is too brutal, you push him off the quick, that's a quick clean death, you push him off. Rabbi Akiva comes along and says that if I was in the time of Sanhedrin and we had a death penalty, I would have found every excuse to get out of it, because he's even more advanced, the people are more developed, more refined, and we won't do it at all. We won't kill at all. First of all, there's a tremendous, unless there's Rishonim that I don't know, to me there's a tremendous ignorance here, in as much as the Gemara in HaChovel, the Ran in HaChovel, and the Rambam gives us as an example as well, in that the Ran says that the Gemara, when it starts to go into analyze, when it says poke out an eye, does it mean an eye or money? The Ran says the Gemara knew from Sinai, had a Kabbalah Sinai, that it means money. It's for sure money. That the Gemara knew at the beginning. The Gemara wanted to show how can we find it in the pasuk, and it proves to us from the pasuk that it means money. We never any question in the Gemara. So the idea that the Torah meant that, and the Chachamim came and made a drasha, and it isn't, seems to be untrue from the Rishonim. Secondly, the concept that the Torah means something, and then Chachamim come later, based on social pressure, based on different development of society, then go and make a drasha that's different. I don't know, that you decide for yourself what that is. I'm not a historian in terms of which Geder of Judaism, which criteria of Judaism that comes into, I don't know. We played this to one of the Dayanim here, all the Dayanim have heard this. We played it to them, and I didn't come to decide what that is, but that doesn't seem to be Orthodox Judaism. That's very, very troubling and very problematic. So I don't like question. Another example, no, not after the end. At the end. Another example, and this I'm going to go now to another example in just in the way that we approach Torah. I want to go to the lecture, the lecture that sparked the controversy. One of the issues that was brought up, one of the issues that I don't think was an issue that made everything flare. It wasn't one of the original issues. It wasn't issues that people came running to the Rabbanim, oh no, look what he said. But this is to me one of the most troubling issues in the Shur. And I have to say, I put this to him myself. I want to just clarify, me and several of my colleagues have been in contact with him. We've posted a rabbinic forum, it's a WhatsApp group that we've posted questions to him, and he answered saying, I'm going to answer you, I'm going to supply answers to your questions. We posted several questions. I posted a couple of questions, my other colleagues posted a question. The rabbi that's quoted in the lecture, who wrote a book on the subject of Mishkav Zachor, right, he himself posted a question on one of the concepts that he said there. Now that rabbi, if you want, is what I was considering maybe the Marada'atra of this subject. He's the first one who wrote a book, the only one who I think wrote an English book from a halachic point of view on this subject. So he spent a long time thinking about this, and he asked a question which wasn't answered. Somebody else from Eretz Israel, quite a senior Rav from Eretz Israel, asked a question. An English speaker asked a question. So questions were posed, and he said that he's going to answer. He came back with this clarification PDF that went around. This clarification document went around, which he said, here, this is the document. He presented that to us and said, but we should, if we've got questions, we should respond to him privately, which I don't think was fair, considering that this PDF was not aimed at us. It spoke about how I have to be more aware of how students understand my words, and this document didn't have almost no backtracking at all. There's almost no revoking in it. I believe it was written by a PR team or somebody who was some sort of spin doctor, because that's what it reeks of. To say misconceptions, meaning it's not clarification, there's no clarification on clarification, it means nothing was unclear in what I said, just you misconceived, you misunderstood. To say, not to say, yes, I made a mistake, retraction one, this was wrong, that wasn't there at all. It was, the style of it was said, there are students here, there's students who've misunderstood, and it's really a problem in the way of putting things across, and it was a thing about students. Well, we were not students, we were his peers, and many of them who asked him were well senior of him in Torah knowledge, who asked him questions. So this document skirted around the issues. It didn't answer the issues particularly. I know one of them was a question that I put, and one of those misconceptions is the question that I posed to him. It quotes the source that I quoted to attempt to answer that source, but only quotes half the source and leaves off. I'm going to come to that in a minute. So it wasn't a fair response, in my opinion. But we have tried to engage. One of the questions, the big question in that shiur lecture was the word to'eva. It's like become the buzzword now, the word to'eva, suddenly, unfortunately. The word to'eva, how do you translate it? Okay, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. There were many aspects. Many rabbanim have looked at that shiur and found plethora of problems with that lecture, and they've gone through all different, each one's got their own angle of what they think is the worst thing in that lecture. You can have machlokot till tomorrow about what is the worst part of that lecture, and people won't agree. People think this is horrendous and that's horrendous and that's horrendous. I might taught some taught some grammar, so maybe that's something that drew me more in terms of what I found so terrible about it. But there's one point there. He says there's two aspects actually to this problem. One of them I'm going to come to now, and one I'll come to in soon. He says the word to'eva does not mean what we take it on to mean, which in the I think there's some James in the King James Bible it's the King James Bible is translated I think as abomination. That may not be an accurate translation, granted. What we translate it as, what every Rebbe tells his Talmud, what every teacher tells his son, tells Talmud, whatever father tells his son, everyone teaches like this, is it means something along the lines of repulsive and rejected and disgusting and shouldn't be there. That's what it seemed to be. That's generally how it's taken as. And when we don't know translation of a word, what do? If it's a word that's cryptic, you find a word in Eov, you have to be earning Eov, or I don't know, something in the middle of that you don't know what the word means. So what do? So you look at something in Rashi, you see if Rashi translates it. Many times Rashi doesn't translate Tikkun Nach, Rashi is quite sparse. We go to the grammarians who translated who have books of Sharashim, where they take the roots and they translate it for us. Not because their opinion is halachically binding, but because they are the ones who went and took the trouble to translate words for us. So we look in these Rishonim, They are early Rishonim. For example, the earliest one that we have, as far as I know, Rav Sajid Gaon did translate some words. If I'm not mistaken, they were in Arabic, so it's not all that useful to most of us. But he translated Rabbi Yonah ibn Janach, or Rabbi Marinos, he's sometimes known as or Rabbi Marwan. He's got a couple of different names in Arabic and Greek, or Rabbi Yonah ibn Janach. He wrote several books on Dikduk, and one of them is Sefer Rikma, is very famous, and one of them is Sefer Sharashim, where he takes all the roots. And he says, give me a second, I'm sorry. Yeah. He says, Taev, Taf Ayin Bet, the root, Taf Ayin Bet, you want this? Yeah, no problem. Taf Ayin Bet is the root, Taf Ayin Bet, Inyan Chanaf, he seems to say, is a bad print, something like Chanufa, like not nice. Umius, v'shikutz, v'tinuf, v'sin'ah. Mius, something disgusting. Shikutz, sheketz, is repulsive. Tinuf is dirt, is dirty. Metunaf. Metunaf means like something soiled, as in like excretia, feces. Metunaf, right? Sorry. Yeah. Tinofet. Now you say about the one about baby tinofet, tinuf, v'sin'ah, and hated. That's one. Now, if you notice in the misconceptions PDF, he quotes that he says Ibn Janach, who says sin'ah means to reject. Just push it out. And it doesn't mean disgusting. Let me just I should just make a little just to pre-word that. The point he was making, and this is the point, the big chidush of the shiur, one of the big chidushim of the shiur was the lecture, was that we have a notion, we have this tendency and this feeling to somebody who's in a same-sex relationship. We think it's disgusting. Somebody who is that way inclined, we think it's disgusting. We're repulsed. We're disgusted by them. We throw them out of shul. We throw them out off a cliff. We're repulsed by them. And there is that feeling that many unfortunately do have. That it's repulsed by the person, and he wanted to say that what makes you think it should be repulsed? Because the Torah calls it to'eva. It says to'eva, as was discussed in the lecture in the shiur of Rabbi Sus quite at length. That to'eva, it says many times the word to'eva when it's talking about arayot, and when it's talking about mishkav zachor, it says to'eva twice, before and in Haremot and kedoshim to'eva. And he is saying a chidush that word to'eva, that you misunderstood the word to'eva. It means something that you have to reject. Just get rid of it. It shouldn't be part of our society. It should be distant, but it shouldn't be. We shouldn't have. It's not telling us how to feel towards it. It's just an action. We should reject it. We shouldn't. There's no indication of how we should feel towards it. So even if we're going to reject the act, meaning that we don't do it, and we try and tell people not to do it, we teach people not to do it. But if somebody who's doing that act, and somebody whose lifestyle is that act, we shouldn't feel repulsion for. We shouldn't feel that we're repulsed by that person. And with many halachic consequences about giving them aliyot, inclusion into tefillot, etc., etc. I'm not certain what the halachic consequences would be, but I just what struck me, and everyone will have their different. What struck me as like, whoa, this is like not a red flag. This is like air raid sirens going off. Is to say that the word to'eva, we know what the word to'eva means. Every father taught his son what to'eva means. If you're not sure what it means, so it's a cryptic word that we don't come across very often, and no one ever told me what it means. We look in the Rishonim. Rabbi Yonah ibn Janach tells us quite clearly it's an inyan of tinuf and sin. I think the connotation there is quite clear. It's something that's disgusting, that you find disgusting and repulsive. That's what to'eva should mean. The Ibn Ezra says it's davar nit'av la nefesh kedosh, la nefesh kedosha. It's something nit'av, whatever to'eva is, it's to'evad for the nefesh kedosha, to the holy soul. Afilu lo betolada, even if it comes to him, even if it's a roundabout way, or even if it's connected to it. So it's nit'av la nefesh kedosha. What does that mean? It's rejected to the nefesh kedosha. You just push it away. It means that the nefesh kedosha, the holy soul, repulses it, doesn't like it. The Radak in the Sharashim, we look to Radak. The Radak says in Taf Ayin Bet is inyan hashikutz v'hasin'ah. It's something that that's what it says. Ta'ev ta'avenu shaket shakatzenu. He seems to want to say that the Radak just means shikutz, as in get it away, and it's hated, as in you should want it removed. But it's not something you should feel disgust for. This just isn't. we see the Rishonim say clearly what it means. We know, everyone knows what this word means. That isn't an accepted, as far as I know, approach of halakha, to take a word and decide that I want to give it a completely different meaning. Now, he went at length to speak about the Gemara in Nedarim that says it's that Bar Kapara asked Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, what does the word to'eva mean when he's talking about Mishkav Zachor? And he said to him, To'e Ataba, which is a notricon, which is like Zaken, Zeshe Kana Chochma, To'e Ataba, because To'eva, the root is Taf Ayin Bet. Here the root is Taf To'e, Taf Ayin He, Ataba, notricon, To'eva. And all the Mepharshim explain, it means that you're veering off the way, you're going off in another direction, you've gone off at a tangent, you're not doing what is normal, you're not doing what is regular within what Hashem wants you to do in the world, maybe, because you're not bearing seed, whatever the reason, whatever it is, you're not doing what is the normal derech of things, of what should be done. In a situation where we know what the word means, and there's nobody in Chumash says, maybe To'eva means what the Gemara says it means, so there seems to be a contradiction. The Gemara presents and it means you're going off the way, and we know, and the Rishonim say, and everybody's taken it seems to understand that it means something disgusting and repulsive. So the answer normally would be that you say the Gemara is in that Agadha, when it's adding a meaning, it's bringing the meaning of a word, it's adding a meaning to the word, it's adding a layer of meaning to the word, and that's perfectly accepted. That's the normal way you would look at an Agadha like that. It's adding a layer of meaning. It might be, you find Gemara, maybe the next two examples in that very Gemara seem to be changing the meaning of the word, but if you're not forced to say that, there seems to be no basis to say that just because the Gemara presents another meaning of the word. Just remember, if you try to open the window, please. Somebody might open the window. It doesn't seem. This is one of the things that pleases. It doesn't seem to be, as far as I know, that isn't an acceptable process of translating a word, and based on that, suggesting a huge change in halakha, a huge nafkamina, a huge different way that we look at somebody in that lifestyle, for example, is different. I'm not saying that therefore if you're going to say that Torah means disgusting, that somebody who has such issues and somebody who has that is like that way inclined, you have to spit at and feel disgusted at and chuck him out shul and he's disgusting. I'm not saying the person is disgusting, but the act, according to everyone in the classic comment, everybody until we knew up till last couple of weeks ago, the act we have to look at as disgusting. And somebody who openly promotes that way of life, lives in that way of life, says, I am living like that, it is a very big question of how you integrate him. You have to try and find a way. If it's going to be more, we have to try to find a way forward. But there is a conflict there because we feel disgusted by the way of life that this person is saying that I live. So I appreciate what he was trying to do is a very valid issue of can we find ways of not kicking somebody out of the shul, because that is never really productive. Generally, pushing people away is never productive. To try and strip the word to'eva of its meaning, of what it means, to say it means something just something you have to push away, physically push away, just mechanically push away, but don't feel disgusted by it, and therefore give me much more room to play with, much more room to move for maneuver. Very, very, very difficult. That it seems to be an unacceptable process of coming to halakha, because this was a halachic v'sach at the end of the day. It's implication in halakha. I wanted to say, and there was a fourth one which I want to add. The fourth point I want to add is where he quotes the Rambam. He says that this was on the point that was the fact, the one that really got everyone talking, where he suggests that the revolution in society, where it's now become acceptable to have that way of life, is a fantastic development for mankind. I think that was along those lines. And he supports this in a way a bit. It's called maybe an asmachta on the Rambam, because the Rambam tells us there are certain things that seem to be wrong. The Rambam says Christianity and Islam, as far as we're concerned, is wrong. It's a misguided faith. Nobody even thinks for a second that anybody spoke to Muhammad. To the Rambam calls him Muhammad Shuga. except in the censored versions. Nobody thinks that Yeshu rose from the dead. No one has a Yeshu as in Yom Hashem over Zichro, right? Nobody thinks he rose from the dead. But so there's a sheker there. The Rambam says the end of there is a process. The world is going through a process, and the process. There's Hakadosh Baruch Hu is bringing the world forward. That's not his Kiddush. That's the day Hashem talks about that. That's very, very clear. Hashem there's a fixed time along the world is going to exist, and Hashem is bringing the world forward to a tachlit. So this process is going on, and the fact there's advances in modern science, the fact that we've advanced in many ways, we've advanced, the non-Jews have advanced culturally in huge ways in terms of human rights, in terms of human rights nowadays in 500 and 200 years ago, in the times of the Chumash, the Goyim at those times, there was nothing of human rights, which is completely barbaric, and we've advanced, we've come forward. He says, even though these seem to be bad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing us to a world where Hashem Echad, where everybody recognizes He is one. That's the aim. That's what we're trying to get to with Mashiach. That's the aim. You can't plonk, if the world for 2,000, 3,000 words are all going to be Aved Avodah Zarah, and they've all got 15 gods, and they've got atheists or 15 gods, and there's no concept of monotheism except for Judaism. That's a disaster. That will work. So what he's done is he's given the non-Jews something that is a type of, it's a belief in one God, and for them it's not Avodah Zarah l'chora. They see it's not Avodah Zarah for them, for non-Jew. And that has allowed them to get the concept of monotheism to sink into them, so that when it comes to Atid Avo, what you're going to tell them, that all they're going to realize is that Yeshu was nonsense and Muhammad was nonsense. That's what they're going to tell them. But the concept of worshiping one God is there. He said, he brings a pasuk in Sefania that I will switch over. I think there's a nuance in the Rambam. What he means to say, it's not really the point. I will flip epoch. He says, I will flip the people. I'm not going to introduce something entirely new, not going to bring on them, I'm going to take where they were and just flip them over. So they're ready, really, intrinsically they're somewhat ready for Hashem Echad. He wants to say based on that you find phenomena which don't seem to be good, like the revolution of accepting this type of way of life, but there are certain positive aspects to it that we can have love between same sex, between men and men. I don't want to go into whether that makes sense or not. He's aiming at some sort of psychological idea, which I think psychology can argue whether that's right or not. It's not Torah, it's not part of the lecture. I don't know, not sure why it was in the lecture, maybe he just threw it in because he likes that type of thing. It could be. It's fair enough. Whether that makes sense or not, the fact that we're now going to love men more, just, me and men love each other more because of that, whether that makes sense or not, I don't know. But intrinsically, it's a way of life that is it in the category of moving the world forward? Is it in the category of the world advancing towards Hashem Echad? There's other ways that the world moves. The Gemara says, in the Atid Lavo, when we come to the end of time, Chutzpah Yaskeh, we'll be in a time where people have tremendous brazenness, people will just be rude to each other, we're going to deteriorate as well. There's ways in the ways the world deteriorate, the ways the world get worse and worse. Which one does this fit into? Something that disgusts HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that something that is mach'is, that angers HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's something that you can say Hashem has put it there because it's got it. That's not what Rambam's saying. Rambam's saying I put something that intrinsically is good. It might have terrible side effects. There's crusades, there's there's mental stuff going on because of these religions, but intrinsically the idea is there is good. Something that intrinsically is bad, something that is against Hashem, to say that is in the Rambam, it's just an abuse of the Rambam. I don't think his idea isn't dependent on the Rambam. I'm not saying it is, but just there's no connection to the Rambam, and the Rambam should not have been brought for that. I want to just throw in the Rabbi Shimon Schwab says something beautiful. We have to understand that we are moving forward. The concept of the world moving forward is very true. The Rabbi Shimon Schwab explains that we receive the Torah from Hashem, and we have a chokhmah, we have a pre-existing chokhmah that's something amazing. We toileted that chokhmah, we developed this is a genius, that knowledge, and that's what we have from Sinai. The Goyim don't have the Torah, and so they have another, and we see in the Torah the greatness of Hashem. Somebody who learns a piece of Gemara can see the greatness of Hashem clearly. That you learn through the Sfarot, you understand the thought process of the Gemara. You say, "Wow, this is something from Shamayim." The Goyim don't have that, but they do have another way of seeing Hashem. The more we advance in scientific discoveries, the more we break open the world around and we see what's happening under the hood, what's actually happening, the more you learn new things, the more we see scientific knowledge develops, the more we get deeper and deeper into understanding the HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the amazing world that He's created. And he said that's what we say in Tefillah, Atachon el Adam Da'at, you gave Adam, meaning Jews, Da'at, which is the Torah, Umlamed le'enosh binah, and you teach Enosh is humankind, Binah. What's Binah? That they have some knowledge, they see something, they learn from that something else. Binah is mod davar mitoch davar, to develop knowledge, to go from one knowledge to another. So Enosh, mankind, humankind, has Binah. You melamed them Binah for the purpose of getting to the Latid Lavo. We will come to a stage where we understand so much about the world around that the world just screams out a brilliance that you can see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it. And it says, as Yeshayahu says, look, see who created it. Look at the creations and see who created this and understand my word from it. So there is, when somebody learns, if there's a mathematician who learns maths and he goes into further maths and goes into applying, he sees algebra, and I was looking at this on like a Boolean algebra and really like kind of random types of algebra where you think like, how do these concepts exist at all in the world? Why should it be that this makes sense and that logic follows that? And you start to realize that these concepts are inherent in creation. You say, wow, it's amazing. So this development is for sure true. But this is not a development of that. This is going the other way. This is something of the world going down and us trying not to be pulled down with it. That's the second one, where we see that the way that those examples of the way, the rules that he's working with don't seem to fit in with regular rules. The third one, and this is the worst, I've come on the worst now, is, and this is a running theme through all the shiurim that I heard. This is really, I found quite disturbing. This is a running theme. There's a certain putting down, a certain zilzul of everyone basically, or other rabbanim for sure, other teachers, anybody who doesn't read the Torah like this, anybody who doesn't realize this, doesn't know. And one example was what struck me was in the shiur itself. The lecture itself was the starting point of this, where I thought this doesn't make sense. Is in the lecture where he says that to'eva, we don't know what it means, he says. You don't know what the word to'eva means. As I described, everybody knows what it means. I'm going to tell you what it means, and I've got this Gemara that it means that. So he's told everyone that nobody knows what the word means. So you've told a word in the Torah, nobody knows what it means. We've all been taught it wrong. I'm going to teach you what the word to'eva means. It doesn't mean you shouldn't feel disgusted. You read it wrong, you taught it wrong. How do I know that a shulchan means a table? When the Torah says a shulchan, it means a table. Maybe they put a bicycle in the Mishkan. Who said they put a table there? Well, no, because was passed down, and that's the Kabbalah of the tradition of what the word means. And if you look in the Erech, probably you look at Erech in the Sharashim, and tell you maybe you find Shulchan. It's a 4-root word, okay, differently. But how do you say that to'eva? Nobody knows what it means. The wording was, I think, nobody knows what it means. You don't know what the word to'eva means. We don't know what the word to'eva means. So you've just told everyone that all the other rabbis don't know what it means. Now that for itself, maybe I'm making a big deal of it. Maybe I'm going over the top. But this is a recurrent theme through all the lectures, where he says. So he said to'eva. No, we don't know what the word means. We're not sure. We don't know what the word means. He says. In one of the other, in what's wrong with modern halakha, he says, what are the tenets, the core principles? The rabbis don't know it. I'm telling you they don't know it. If you heard the absolute ignorance that I hear on a daily basis from the rabbinate, I'm serious about that. Over and over again, that you hear the rabbanim, the ignorance coming out, the people don't know what it is, don't know what it means. Nobody knows, this is the wording exactly. Nobody knows, in another shiur, nobody knows anything. Your parents, your grandparents failed you. He says your parents failed you, but don't worry, your grandparents also failed you. And I'm going to set you right, don't worry. The constant bashing and diminishing and saying that others don't know. In the last year we gave now, it came up again. We spoke about evolution. I'm not going into the point of whether evolution is compatible with the Maaseh Bereshit or not. You can kind of squeeze it in maybe, but Then what the point? He says there that everyone around is reading the Torah. They don't know how to read the Torah because they're not realizing that evolution screams from the Torah. He's got lectures and lectures describing how evolution fits into the Pesukim. Fair enough. I'm interested to hear this Chidushim. But it says the reading the Torah like that which is who reads the Torah like that to exclude evolution? And then everybody, right? Everybody except a very few, a percentage of Orthodox Jews include evolution in the way the Torah was created. So I'm not sure whether he's right or not, but the point is that's almost as 90% of Jews, 95%. And he says, and then says, this is the way the way reading the Torah without thought, without nuance, without looking into it, just reading its face value, saying Hashem created Shamayim and the Aretz and the man and the that and that. That's how Christians read the Bible. That's how Christians read the Bible, he says, and that's not. So yeah, Christians read the Bible. And they read at face value and have issues because they don't know which bits they're supposed to take and which bits not, and they don't know whether they're supposed to keep Shabbat or Sunday. It's very confusing. But the flow of it is, and this is the constant implication, is that yes, everybody basically is reading the Torah like Christians. Everybody, put all the Rabbanim in that category, and there's a constant flow. Take one of any of the lectures, you'll see. I think maybe I'm wrong. You'll tell me maybe some of you've been lectures more. It's a constant theme of putting down. It's a self-actualization. It's a self thing, and I don't know if it's to make someone feel better themselves or whether it's just to make sure that you don't go to anyone else. I don't know what the purpose is. I'm not trying to speculate what the reason is, but there is this constant putting down of other rabbis, and there's a constant putting down of the way that we perceive Judaism, that it's wrong, and I'm going to build it for you. And one example I want to give is one that was very famous. One thing that did come out about a year or two ago that was a real, I think when it was still here, that was a real controversy, and kind of, people thought it was really bad or whatever, was he said the halakha about nitilat yadayim. Now looking at different shurim, I realised it wasn't just about that. It's something that's a constant theme. It seems to be a constant theme. He said, nitilat yadayim, the halakha is that you don't need to really, minadin, the Shulchan Aruch holds that you wash your hands before bread, when you have a meal, wash your hands before bread, you make it your dime, and in Mikara din, technically, the din is that you can speak after that. Others who hold you can't speak, well, I don't know where they got that from, and then maybe there's a Rosh who, I think, if it's not mistaken, the Rosh holds that you shouldn't speak. Now, Minhag Olam is not to speak. Now, you could tell me that the Minhag the set of custom is not to speak after you wash your hands. Whether it's right that Sephardim follow that, which isn't the Shulchan Aruch or not, so you can go back to the original Sephardim that did do that, and then ask them why are you following that, but the fact is they followed that, and that's what we do. But it's more than that. And he tells us that it's not true. Rav Avadja, I was in his house and he spoke. Rav Avadja spoke in his house after Nitilat Yadayim before he washed. After he washed Nitilat Yadayim, there's a disturbing point here. Is that if you invite somebody around your Shabbat table, somebody who's not all that affiliated with it, not all that keeping, doesn't know that much, what's the picture of a Shabbat table that we have? Is one of the main things is you go and everyone goes and washes, and everyone is quiet, and until you make hamotzi. That's the tzura, the picture you have of Shabbat, and he's smashing that, and he's saying no, it's wrong. So many examples of that. There are other examples that I'm going to go. I don't want to go on. You have to if you just take one shur, you see so many examples of that. This is a constant theme of just smashing the way that we paskin up to now that this Pesach is wrong. These Pesach and the way you're going about the Pesach is wrong. The Rabbanim don't know. The Rabbanim they're not right. And there's a constant bashing. There's one. I want to read. There's one. And another example of that, he talks about television on Shabbat. He says, the idea that people say that you're not allowed to watch television on Shabbat, there's nothing. There's no problem watching television on Shabbat. As a matter of fact, my family was Shomer Shabbat, and I grew up watching television on Shabbat. We had the housekeeper change the channel for us. We don't watch television today, but there's no prohibition to do so. So it might be minadin, it might be that technically I can find which isur are you doing by having the television on the times which I'm watching it. Now, I don't believe there's any posik in the world that says that it's not a zilzul of Shabbat. The zilutah de Shabbat is also something that's a zilzul. But aside from that, which malacha are you doing? Maybe no malacha. But is that Shabbat in your mind? Is that Shabbat? Or there's some sort of a process to try and break. You've seen Judaism wrong up to now, and I'm going to teach you Judaism. That seems to be the theme. I want to read another. He says here. He said one. It's not the Havi right there. He says that in the end of the what's wrong with modern halacha, and he says he says like this. He says it is the exploitation of ignorance that allows it to keep going on. Don't accept the exploitation of ignorance. Don't accept. People have told you that it's asur to do this. Talking about a pot, whether an aluminium pot is really absorbs, whether the aluminium pot is like glass and you can just wash it out and use it. And he wants to say a chidush that he thinks aluminium really doesn't absorb. But others who say Rishon Zalman Auerbach suggest that it's not so. That is, but the halachas we don't say that. No one does that in practice. And he says it finishes as if people at Rabbanim are tricking you. Really, you could do it. It's an exploitation of ignorance. It's a constant quote. It's exploiting ignorance. You're exploiting that they're lying to you. He says, they're lying to you. The rabbis are lying to you. They're exploiting your ignorance. That's breaking people's confidence into. There seems to be a constant theme all the way through. And I want to, and there's one more aspect to this is, and this was something that we put to him that he did not respond to at all. The document that went round responded with some misconception, with some had like some sort of attempt at talking about it. This he didn't respond to at all. This is something that's very distressing in a different way. He brings the Gemara during that shiur. He brings the Gemara of a Bar Kapara approaching Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Rebbe. And he's at a wedding, and it's a very weird story. It's a very cryptic story. He's at a wedding, and Bar Kapara, if you read the Gemara by itself, he says Bar Kapara wanted what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi used to be quite serious, and he wanted to, and he didn't want him to be so serious, and he wanted to make him laugh. So obviously the jokes that Bar Kapara said are not going to be the jokes that not going to be a stand-up comedy. He had his joke with things that got Rabbi Yehuda Nasi to be in a bit of a better mood. There were things, they had their humour between them. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, what I mean to say is they had their wavelength of what would lighten their mood. They had a wavelength, right? Sorry? They're bound. No, it's not bound. That's what I said. That's the problem. I don't want to say that. It's not banter. They had their wavelength of what he knew, what he could say to him that would make him out of his heavy mood. And then what did he? He's making a wedding, Rabbi Nasi, and he comes, and he didn't invite Bar Kapara because he didn't want him to make him laugh. And he comes there in the end. He invites him for whatever reason. If you see the story there, and he asks him the question. I want to ask you a question. He asks him this question of what's to'eva. It's a very cryptic, beyond cryptic Gemara. You're at a wedding, you ask him that there's 3 difficult psukim in the Torah that I want you to tell me the answer. If you can tell the answer, if I tell you the answer, then your wife has to bring me a cup of drink. Like you made like a bet with him. And what 3 psukim what 3 words does he ask Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? He says, you tell me what the word means. If you give up, then I've won. What are the words? To'eva. What does to'eva mean? My to'eva. What does tevel mean? Where it says about bestiality, tevel. And zima, when it talks about a woman, zima. There's 3 words he asks. Now, why was he asking that? It really needs a very, very deep Gemara. But it's a Gemara that you approach with, as every Gemara, you approach with trepidation. You approach with koved rosh. You read the Gemara. To say, Bar Kapara couldn't stand Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's seriousness and elitist nature, and so on and so forth. He felt that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, I'm not doing it justice, he felt that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was losing his soul. It's not a way of speaking about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Bar Kapara used to do slapstick stuff. So you've got a picture of Bar Kapara sitting on a unicycle going right in the wedding, do slapstick stuff. First of all, he graffitied the wedding hall. At this stage, he felt it was a waste of money. That's what he says. He felt it was a waste of money. No, the Gemara says he painted something on it. The art scroll translates it as graffiti, meaning I think they've just been technical about it. He painted the outside of it. You have to be very careful. I don't use art scroll ever really. I don't think I ever use art scroll. It's so I don't know whether you could say, oh well, if the art scroll said it, then it's all right. I don't know, but I guess you can say if the art scroll said it, and no one made a fuss about it, then why make a fuss about what he said? So it's a graffiti, but it's the the whole presentation of these Gedolei Tanaim is completely unacceptable. But let me just explain who Rabbi Bar Kapara was, just in case you didn't know. Maybe you come across Bar Kapara, Tanei Bar Kapara, he's in the Ketoret. Bar Kapara, the Rambam at the beginning of Pirush HaMishnayot has a Hakdama, and he says, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, Sarah Yoshua. The Torah was received from Sinai and was brought down to Yeshua, etc. Yeshua is Kinim, etc., etc. He says, it goes to Shmuel Hanavi, and he was Moseh, meaning that the oral law, the Torah that was not written down, the explanation of the Torah was given to go over to from Shmuel to David HaMelech, from David HaMelech Ahiyah Shiloni, etc., etc., etc. It gets all the way down to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote it down and made the body of the oral law became the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, became the Mishnah that we know. He says, she would like to read it inside, if you don't mind, just bear with me a second. And it isn't really needed for this, because it could be any of the Tanaim or Amoraim. He says there were Baalei Kabbalah, there were people who received from Rabbi Nasi, there were his Gedolei HaTalmidim, who were around him, was Rabbi Yochanan, the people that we know who were the main Amoraim at the first generation. Shmuel, he says, Bar Kapara. He says, many with them. There were many other Talmidim with them as well. There were loads of Talmidim who learned from Rabbi Danasi. So who are these Talmidim? These were the ones who were the Baalei HaKabbalah. They're the ones who Rebbe, who had received the Torah Shabbat Peh from the generation before, he passed it on to them. They're the ones. So there were other Talmidim who knew lots of Torah, but between these Talmidim was the body of Torah Shabbat Peh. These were the serious ones. And he was one of the Gedolei Talmidim of Rabbi Nasi. So it might be in that context, like Gemara, you see, and you look at a wedding hall, and it's really like interesting for people to see you present it like that. But to present Bar Kapara and Rabbi Nasi in that way is just it's shocking. I just found it shocking, and that was something put in. There was no answer given at all. And it's feeling it's not. To me, that's shocking. What should be the way going forward? I don't know. It's not my business. It's not my thing. I just wanted to make it clear that these are the points that every rabbi of every kehillah around is aware of this, and is talking about this, and is working out what should be done with this. It's not a question of he's an inclusive person and people have extra style in there and they're just jealous of him and they just there are serious issues that are being discussed. This has moved way past the lecture about that original lecture and whether we need to be more inclusive, whether we need to say that they can have aliyot and all that type of thing, and whether somebody is showing love, etc., etc. It's moved way past that. There are serious questions on somebody who is at the moment is the head of a body of Torah in England. He is the head of her kashrut is being run under him, hands on. Somebody is making basic mistakes like this. Somebody whose his gisha, his access to the way he's approaching Torah is very, very difficult. It's very serious questions. So for people, I am bothered that there's a chilul Hashem on the ground where people are saying, writing on Facebook, putting messages that this is disgusting. How people are just attacking somebody who's just doing this, just doing that, based on his love and his openness to accept people with a different way of life, and how the Rabbanim are all doing that and whatever. That's not what the Rabbanim have an issue with. In fact, it's all unnecessary. If he would have, after that first lecture and after he met the Dayanim, would have held his hands up and said, I realised I got a bit carried away with this idea. I had this idea about fabulous. He said he was thinking about it for years and years. Okay, he had this idea of thinking about it. There are chachamim that think about something for 30 years. They break over it day and night, break their heads over it, and they shelve it because they're not sure. So the fact he's talking about it for 3-4 years, I saw somebody saying this is something that I've seen him talk about for. I know he spent 3 or 4 years preparing this. Big deal. That's really nothing. But if it's something that he feels he would have said, I really got carried away, and it really has been taken wrong. I've taken wrong, a combination of taken wrong, of me being a bit wrong, and it would have gone past it. It would have carried on. There was no issue. The reaction made everyone sort of think, why does someone not want to budge on this? This doesn't make sense. There's something that doesn't make sense here. It's just, what else did he say? And then you start to see shurim full of all this. This is just examples I picked out. After I started praying this shir 9 o'clock this morning, and I haven't eaten anything other than 2 pieces of matzah that I found in Koilov. I'm meaning to say that I was sifting through mountains of stuff, working out what I can say to you that's going to be clear and come across without taking hours of stuff. There's mountains. There was shurim given by a colleague of mine on Shabbat, and he maybe mentioned one or two of these things, and he brought a whole lot of other things. There's just a whole lot of stuff. It is a major problem. At the moment, the situation is, and it just bothers me that it upsets me the spin on the situation where it's presented that somebody who's doing all the right things, he's loving going out, etc., etc. He's gone to Israel to meet his critics, so he's going forward to talk to them. Who are critics in Israel exactly? The critics are all here in London. We're the critics. They didn't come to meet me. They were the critics. The critics are, the Rishon LeZion wrote a letter against him, who is his wife's uncle. He went to Israel to beg that it should be retracted, because if that letter is not retracted, then he's no longer viable for him to be in his position. They just don't want somebody who Rishon LeZion wrote a letter against. He went to beg for his letter to be retracted, and Rishon LeZion has said there's a bet din. I don't want to retract it. Essentially, that's why I understand. He basically doesn't want to retract it, but he, which is very telling in itself, which is quite damning. But he said that there's Batei Din here, let Bet Din here decide, and they're going to, and at the moment, I think, decide whether he is appropriate. I don't know exactly the nusach of what the din Torah is. I don't know. It's something along the lines of whether he's appropriate to be in such a position, to be in a position as a Rav, or whether he needs to take on certain steps to be considered a rabbi again, a rabbi at all. It's something along those lines. I don't know. I said to one of the dayanim, how you can do that? I don't even know what you mean. And he was like, yeah, well, that's why I'm a dayan and not you. So I said to him, rather you than me. I said to him, rather you than me. I mean, I don't even know how that works. But that's the situation. I think they're waiting for his signature on it. They want his signature to say that I accept the psach of what the dayanim are going to say, and he hasn't signed on it, and we don't know if he's going to sign, but that's where it is. Meaning, this is a very, very serious situation. It's a tragic situation. I'll go back to the beginning. This really wasn't fun. It's an absolute tragedy, and it's almost an unnecessary tragedy. Some people ask me, why is that all this has come about? Yeah, he's going shurim for so long. It's because I don't think some of these things may have not been, some of the things that are like a red flag, or a warning sign, are like a erid siren for some of us, wouldn't necessarily, people see the shit think that sounds alright. So, and people hearing every week that Ever Rabbanim are this, other than that, you don't necessarily notice it until you've stepped back and you're looking from the outside. So, it's something that I just want the message to be that there is a serious situation here, that it's honestly a situation that needs looking at. It's not anyone with politics, it's not anybody looking to knock him down, it's not anybody with Rabbi Sus. At this stage, pretty much everybody agreed that the line Rabbi Sus took, which was like very, very extreme, and everyone was surprised, and I spoke to Rabbi Sus a few days beforehand. I went through things with him, and I was still surprised at the line he took. I was not expecting that. I was like, whoa, he came in and literally just dropped the atom bomb on him. That was like, that was really, really harsh. The question now is only, looking back, was Rabbi Sus right to do it then or not? That's the only question. Nobody really disputes of the Orthodox Rabbanim are out. All the Rabbanim. I'm talking about, I had a meeting with Dayanim, and a cross-section was a meeting, me as a Rav of a Sephardi shul, sitting, four of us sat with a Dayan, a Rav of a Sephardi shul, a Rav of a Ashkenazi shul, who was not actually under that Dayan jurisdiction, of a different Ashkenazi shul under the thing, a Rav of a massive Kiruv organization, a completely different world, and a serious Baal Halacha who passes halachot, who's not a rabbi of a shul. Four of us sat there and we said there's a major issue here. But the machloket is not that there isn't really a big machloket in terms of what actually, that there isn't a great machloket amongst, there's no two sides of Rabbanim here. There's a machloket of how we deal with this, whether it's right to do that, how extreme you go. There's no machloket though now. There's no machloket now. One second. There's no machloket. Please, this is what I want to clarify. We'll finish with this. I want to finish this. There is no machloket amongst the Rabbanim that saying for him as if he's fine. What he's teaching is okay, and it's all just a witch hunt. There's nobody saying that. the word Rabbanim was supporting him until very recently, saying he should still carry on giving lectures and whatever. That Rav has been, he's under jurisdiction of a more senior Dayan, and that Dayan is categoric that there's a major issue here. There's no Rabbi, as far as I know, unless these are ideas. And what I've come across here, maybe there are people, Rabbanim in America who are considered Orthodox, who have these type of ideas, who do this type of thing. I don't know. Something I've never come across. This is something that the Bnei Yeshiva I've never come across. People who've been learning for years in Yeshiva have never come across this attitude, all these problems together. And I'm talking about some of my colleagues are American. They're learning different yeshivot. There's something major here. This is what I want to say. And therefore, when you're looking at it and people are saying to you, I don't know what they're saying to you. They're saying to you that this is discussed as a witch hunt. They're just picking on one thing and they're trying to pull him down. It's not one thing. There is a whole plethora of problems here that need to. And B'ezras Hashem, we just hope that it can be dealt with in a way that the ideal would be halavai. I don't know. It would be something. The ideal would be that it could help in a way that he will actually be able to develop his style and his angle and the way that his approach, and he could carry on giving shiurim and giving lectures, because he has tremendous capabilities and he's helped people tremendously, and that's very, very clear, and I don't doubt that. Whether that's going to happen, whether my prayer is that there won't be more machloket. The Rabbanim here have taken a line of, the senior Rabbanim have taken a line of not saying anything, not making massive shiurim and putting up notices. Notices will be counterproductive, not what people want to see. The development was the Roshani Sion got involved, and that really was like a shot to, that was a headshot, if that stands. So therefore that kind of finishes the whole business, if that letter stands. So if that wouldn't have happened, then there would have been processes of working out how he's going to be pulled to task from the inside. We didn't want to do it in a way that it's overtly machloket. There is a dispute here, and it's really, really sad. And I hope, B'ezras Hashem, we can move forward to actually bring shalom and bring positive. I don't want to be giving a shir like this. We should give a shir that's some positive things. And on a sat now for an hour, I was just talking negative, and it's not really acceptable. And I asked Mechila again from you, if I've said something that isn't right to be. As far as I know, what I'm saying is it needs to be said in public. People need to know. If I'm wrong in what I've said, if I shouldn't have, I ask Mechila, and I just hope that it will be sorted out quicker. The quicker it's sorted out, the better. I hope things don't take long. They have to be done quickly, and it will be done in a way that we can move forward as a kila, as Sfardim, as English Jews. That we can move forward, and we can as Sfardim and Ashkenazim, and we can progress, and we can get towards greater Yirat Shamayim, greater keeping mitzvot, greater understanding of mitzvot, more meaning in our lives, until the B'ezras Hashem Mashiach comes.